Hey guys, welcome back to the Modern Housewife podcast. I'm so stoked you guys are here. And for today's episode, I wanted to talk about homeschooling. Okay, so ever since I started putting homeschool content, I wouldn't say a lot. There's like maybe five videos on my main channel. I've had a mixed bag of responses. Obviously, there are people that are like really against homeschooling. Then there's also people that do homeschool and they're so pro. And there's also people that just don't want me to talk about it because their kids are in school and they're not homeschooling. So it's just not interesting to them. So I'm not going to make this podcast about homeschooling, but I am going to talk about my journey with it. Okay. Because you guys know I went to private school up until 8th grade. Well, you won't know this maybe. And then public high school. And so I was like a regular person, and then I went to college, got a bachelor's degree in business. So I am definitely like schooled, like I was basically in school all my life. And then I went to daycare after when I was a kid. So I'm really used to formal education, Doug as well. And so this is all new to me. And so I'm not going to do like the beginning of this podcast. I'm not going to talk about like why we homeschool because I have a video all on that on my main channel, which I will link below if you guys are listening or watching this. But I am going to talk about, like all of the things I've experienced throughout the last 6 months of officially homeschooling Annabelle, my kindergartner. I can't speak today, who just turned 6. And so like a lot of people think that I'm this, I don't know if it's crunchy, but like this just typical, stereotypical, not that I really look like one. Cause I feel like stereotypical homeschool moms, they wear like bandanas and they never look put together. At least this is what I always thought. Like this is a very candid podcast. Okay. I'm going to speak my mind. So they just live for their kids and they don't care about, not that anything matters about looks. But you know what I'm saying? Like they look frumpy and they're just like headless chickens running around homeschooling their kids all the time. And that's what I thought. Okay. I thought all of those things that you guys, a portion of you guys, not all of you, think. And so now that I've actually homeschooled and joined like multiple co-ops, multiple different groups, I will say that I have so much stuff obviously to say in this podcast, but I will say that there are straight up stereotypes and a lot of them are right. That's why they're stereotypes for a reason. But a lot of them are like just totally misconstrued. And so I wanted to talk about like just the different groups I've experienced, the different like interactions we've had with homeschooled kids, because when I don't think my sister's listening, maybe, but she would laugh. I don't think she would care that I say this, but when I was like, Casey, I'm going to homeschool, she's like, homeschool kids are freaks, Haley, like, come on. And you guys know, if you watched the last podcast episode, my family is like super blunt and like, we just tell it like it is. I'm like, okay, but like, whatever, I'm going to try it, So I thought that too. And I was always kind of insecure about like, well, are homeschool kids actually introverted and weird? And I knew that they weren't because I like had met a lot of homeschool kids that are my current clients, like for our business, and they were homeschooled their whole life. They're my age and they are not socially inept. They're like YouTubers and influencers. They've got these 7-figure businesses and they're thriving. Not that everything's about money, but you know what I mean? Like there's something to be said for someone that can communicate effectively on YouTube. They're not like socially awkward. Obviously, they got massive amounts of people interested in them. So I saw these people that were my age and I started to think, well, maybe that's just not the case. And maybe, but yeah, you always meet that one weird homeschool kid, like growing up, and you're like, they're weird. I don't know what, I think I'll get into the socialization aspect in a minute. But before we really get into today's episode, there's a couple housekeeping things. And basically, let me get my notes. Okay. So first thing is, if you guys have not left a review, it would mean the absolute world to me. I never asked for reviews on things. I never have had to. And I don't even on our other podcast, with the one that I have with Doug on business. But would you please leave a review if you guys get anything or are entertained slightly from this podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast? I would love that. I'm used to saying we, but I also record these podcasts on a separate YouTube channel. You can just type in, it might not show up because it's not really ranked yet. There's like one video, but the Modern Housewife podcast YouTube channel, I'll link it below. If you'd rather watch me talk to you like a YouTuber, you can watch these episodes. I'm also extremely out of breath because I'm like 10 weeks pregnant. So I said this in the last one. If I'm wheezing, like, please forgive me. And like inhaling and whatever, exhaling. So there's that. Also, if you guys wanted to, I have a weekly email newsletter that I'm just starting for moms. So I've never done anything like this before. I've never even had an email list for my motherhood accounts, but I'm going to be sending out anything cool. Okay. So it's not just going to be weekly recaps and like buy through my links and like, here's the clothing I like. I might do some of that because you guys you do ask me questions on like, where'd you get that dress or whatever. But it's more going to be about like me actually writing you guys a letter every single week on the things I'm learning, interesting things that I would like to hear about in regards to anything to do with motherhood. Okay. Mindset, marriage, challenges, stressors of life, like super transparent, like letters to you guys every single week. I know that sounds weird, but maybe just sign up and see if you like it. You can always unsubscribe. So I'll leave that down below. It's completely free. And then I'm also going to send out like free trainings on the things that I'm learning and different things that I'm going to get up to. And so let's go ahead and get into the whole homeschool portion of the podcast. Okay, so the very first thing that I wanted to kick off this podcast on homeschooling is what I thought it was like. So I already mentioned the stereotypes of the frumpy homeschool mom that like doesn't care for herself, right? And the kids that are weird and awkward and shy. I can tell you guys that they are real. Okay, so you probably didn't expect me to say that. They are real, okay? I've met some of the most awkward people. Like this is me just being straight up, but there's a flip side. So just bear with me before you're like, I knew it. Okay. So I've met some of the most awkward people in my life and they were homeschooled and I've met them this year. Okay. Me and Doug, which I wouldn't consider as awkward at all. We'll walk up to anybody and like introduce ourselves. And like, I mean, we're part of Greek life. So groups of people are like our thing, you know? And so but anyways, I digress. Okay. So we're not perfect. I could be so awkward and we're both introverts and we're weird. Okay. So we have a weird life. So we're not perfect. I'm not like a public speaker. Clearly I can barely speak today, but yeah. So we have met some of the weirdest people ever that are homeschool adults and kids this year. So I assure you they are real. My sister's right about that. But what she wasn't right about, I'm just kidding, is there are completely normal ones too. And there's people all over the spectrum. And a lot of homeschool families will say, well, there's weird kids in public school. You are right. Like, obviously, we went to regular school and there are people that weird is not the right word. Okay. I got to get like more politically correct here. But there are just people that have a difficult time in social situations. I got to be a little softer. Okay. You know, they are shaking when they have to do a presentation. Nothing's wrong with that. I was shaken too in high school. I was nervous too. That's just kind of comes with the territory of growing up, you know, being a kid. You're not always like super talkative, whatever. But there are kids that chew the pencils off the erasers off their pencil. You know, we all have that one kid at elementary school and you're like, you're eating an eraser. Like, what are you doing? People with no self-awareness, you know? And so they're in regular school, but I do think there are groups of extreme socially inept people that are homeschooled. And so a lot of people will meet one of them. Like, are you serious? And they're pretty rare, but I did go to, like, I'm going to be real. We took Annabelle to two different circumstances. Why should I ever start a homeschooling podcast off with the weirdos? Like, I shouldn't, like, seriously. But we went to two different groups. Okay. One was like a birthday party of a friend that I met at this co-op, and she was fine. You know, she's like normal, but for some reason, all of her homeschool friends and their kids went, and they were like, it was like I was in some type of crazy movie because they were so awkward and the kids were shaking, you know, hiding in between their mom's legs at like an older age. And we're like, what in the world? We found out they're all homeschooled. I'm like, are you kidding? And then the second instance was Doug took Annabelle to like a PE class, which we should have known because there's nothing wrong with PE classes or organized sports. Like, who cares what you do? But if it's not an organized sport, it's usually the PE classes like for homeschoolers. That's where all the kids go that like aren't good at sports, which you don't have to be good at sports. We don't think that at all. We're not going to push sports on our kids unless they want to. And Doug also said, because he took her, that was like crazy. Like, one kid would get nudged and they would just cry. Like, and so those were the two experiences that we've had where we're like, what is happening? But I would say that's just probably 10 to maybe 15% of our experiences, because around 80% of the experiences we've had with different homeschooled people, like parents and kids, and going to these bigger groups, they're completely normal, like completely. So I just think that it just depends. There's like, you know, there's a level of, there's a scale, you know, you're going to have like super normal people, whatever, average, and then the people that are not able to communicate effectively. And so for the groups that we're in, they are like, they're you know, their kids are in organized sports. Again, doesn't really matter. But I believe in order to be in a serious organized sport, you've got to take some, like, you can't be the word I want to say is weenie, but you know what I'm saying? You can't be someone that is easily offended. You know, if you get pushed to the ground, like in football, like you're not gonna, some kids cry, but you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know, we're getting kind of weird here, but you know what I'm saying? Like you have to be a capable person emotionally and a strong person emotionally in organized sports, at least for my and Doug experiences. Doug did baseball his whole life, you know, so you got to just hide your emotions. And I'm not saying it's wrong or right. It's probably wrong. But so anyways, but yeah, in these homeschool groups that we go to, the kids are very well socialized. They either come from really large families of like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plus. Not really. It's around 10 is probably the cap that we've met. And they're either not in like a lot of activities or they are, but they are still very, very like emotionally stable. How else do you want me to say that? You know, so that's been amazing. So we go to a couple different groups, and it's honestly, homeschooling is not for the faint of heart, because if you just put your kid in school, everything is done, and it's tempting sometimes, let me tell you, because I am an introvert talking about all these people that can't speak. Like I actually am an introvert, and I have that tendency to not want to make friends. Like I don't. You know, I have so much going on. Like, I don't want to go to a mom group, like kill me. I just don't, because I don't have time. I don't want to make the time for that. I'd rather put it towards the family, the business, like things that take up the bulk of my time, you know? It's for a different phase of life. And so I've had to force myself for the benefit of my children, because I do want them to experience all different types of cultures, all different types of personalities, learn the way other people learn, to see, you know, other kids their same age. I don't think it's necessarily important for Annabelle to be with all 6th graders and then all 7th graders and then all, I really like the fact that in homeschooling, which I never experienced, you guys know, you're learning from kids of all ages. So like she does like some type of organized sports, like in a co-op that she's in, but the 8th graders teach all the little kids. And the 8th graders, they learn the skill of teaching, you know, the little kids learn the skill of, I don't know, whatever, doing what they're doing, but learning from someone that is near to their age that I don't know, it's more exciting for them, you know? So there's a lot of camaraderie, and it's not so droll, and it's so cool to see all of the ages interact. Like that's my favorite part. I love it. I can also say that for the 80% of people that we associate with on a regular basis of the co-ops that they're more Charlotte based, not that it really matters, but they communicate real well. And a lot of most of the families have their own businesses for whatever reason. I think it's because you have to be so flexible when it comes to like homeschooling your kids. The dads are involved just as much as the moms are involved. Like I thought Doug would be the only dad, not where we live. I think it depends on where you live. But in SoCal, there's a lot of people that own businesses because it's so expensive. So a lot of the dads are there. They'll switch off with the moms just like we do. And so it's been like the best thing ever. Like from the moment, remember when my sister was like, they're going to be weird. I thought they're going to be weird, but I got tried anyways. I'm so thankful that I sought out all of these different opportunities to socialize, to meet other people, because it just broke my beliefs. My belief that I'm not going to meet people like myself who are, it's nothing to do with money. I just mean who are living a specific life where I also work and homeschool. I'm just going to meet moms that live off one income, that live their life for their kids. Like that was a worry to me, not because of the money part, but just because like I can't relate at all. Like I literally can't relate at all, because I split my time, and I don't need to relate because I'm doing this for other reasons, but it's going to be hard for me to get their advice, you know, because they can do it all for their kids. And sometimes I envy that, and that's a different subject. Maybe that'll be me one day if I decide to quit all this. But so it was hard. At first I was like, this is going to be very difficult. And I had all these beliefs. But once I started going from group to group and finding the perfect fit for us, we probably went through like 15 different homeschool groups in Southern California. And when I mean go through, I just mean we go to their park days, or we go to their like meeting. We see how they like to teach their kids. Like, why do they homeschool in the first place? I don't interview, like obviously that's weird, but I meet as many people as I can, and I assess like the ages of the kids. If all the kids are 15, that's probably not the group for me. We'll go to the next. You know, if all the kids are like 2, like that's, you know, I like to have a mix. If the group is like way too small, if it's on the wrong day, like it's not just about like, do these people meet up to my expectations? It's not so much like that. It's more of just, you know, is this going to be beneficial for our experience and our time and all that? And so I've gone through 15-ish of these groups where I have to walk up to a group of random moms, usually in a park or something, and say, hey, I'm new to this group. Like I said, it's not for the faint of heart. And a lot of moms, they don't even go to co-ops. They just like homeschool their kids solo. And I tried that for like the first 6 months, like last year, but it was so lonely and I'm used to having community. We have no family around. So I wanted that community so bad. And I'm so glad we did. So anyways, that was a huge like word vomit of everything I could think of as far as like what I thought it is. Anyways, back to it. Okay. So like the group that we're in right now is the most like eclectic, probably not the word. I don't know. It's the most diverse group of people. Okay. The kids speak just as well as the adults. This is the thing. It's like those first two groups that I talked to you about, like socially awkward, like 10 out of 10. Okay. But then the group that we're in, the kids they already have their own little businesses at age like 8, 9, and 10. So we went to like this handicraft fair the other day and all the kids, like we brought like a tic-tac-toe set and I thought ours is going to be the best. Like, whatever. We tried our best. So annoying. Like those parents to do it for the kids. Couldn't help ourselves. And so we get there and I'm like, our stuff sucks. Like our stuff sucks so bad. These kids are so like capable. They're so smart and they're making like handmade kazoos. I mean, they're making knives. They make like, I don't know, there's like different things. And so these kids are just totally thinking outside the box. They already know how to sell. They already know how to market. They're nothing like the kids that I went to in school. Okay, who like really were afraid of adults. That's the one thing, one of 100 things I could say about these homeschool kids that are on this end of the spectrum. They're not afraid of people of any age. They'll talk to a toddler, they'll talk to an elderly person, they'll talk to an adult as if they're talking to someone of their own age. And so when I was in school, I was fearful of adults because they were gonna like, give me a bad grade or I didn't want them judging me for whatever reason. Not these homeschool kids, like at all. And I love it. Like I love that they're so confident and they can communicate really well. So anyways, that's what I thought it was. It took a 180 for me to, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears of trying these different groups and my kids being dragged around from park to park for like half a year. But it's totally worth it because it's just so cool. Like a lot of these homeschool families like Doug and I, they live lives very alternatives, probably not. We're just like strange lives. So like we met one girl in our group. She lives half of her time in the Sierras, which I don't even know where that is. It's like a mountain in California, mountain range. And then she rents in San Clemente because they like to, I don't know, live without internet. She sounds weird, but she's actually super normal. A lot of them are very outdoorsy. And then obviously Charlotte Mason's very literature based and, your kids are supposed to be outside 3 hours a day, which we are for sure because we live in SoCal and they like to go on hikes. They do lots of nature stuff, field trips every week. Like that is a kid's dream. I wanted a field trip every week as a kid. So that's what they get to do. And it's amazing. Okay. So super happy with the homeschooling, obviously. So the last thing I wanted to mention as far as like socializing, because the only reason I lead with this, I shouldn't, because there's so many other things I could talk about, which we will, like how many hours a day does it take? How strict am I? Our schedule, all that. But the socializing was the biggest concern for me because I did so much socializing. I met like my closest friends right now in school. And so you think, well, can I get that same type of experience with my own kids? Because all you know is your own experience. So anyways, that's why I lead with it. But the last thing I have to say about socializing is the homeschool kids on this end of the spectrum, not the ones that just don't do anything. I don't know what's going on because they can barely communicate, some of them, which it's like that in public school sometimes too. But the ones that are effective communicators that are not, they have to be outgoing, but people that are comfortable and more confident with themselves, the kids and the parents, they do socialize a lot. So these, like if you're on the fence of homeschooling because of socialization, it's really, really silly because it's 2023 and homeschooling is not like the way that it was. Okay. All the people in our group are extremely normal. They put their kids in a lot of different socialization opportunities, not just with their neighbors, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's honestly sufficient. Your kid doesn't have to be socialized 24/7, 8 hours a day, Sometimes I think it's too much. They don't get any alone time in school. At least I didn't. But as far as like this end of the spectrum, like obviously what we're trying to aim for is these kids go to church every Sunday, even if you don't, they go to church every Sunday. Most of them are in organized sports or they'll do other things like camping clubs, hiking clubs, surfing clubs, all throughout the year. And what else do they do? I mean, I'm going to just tell you guys like what our kids' schedule is, because I feel like that would be helpful, just because I get the question a lot. Well, how do they socialize? I want to do it, but I'm scared of that. And I have one kid maybe. Like, it's not even a worry at all. Like, at least to me right now, because of like how much information I've learned from these other families. So what our schedule looks like is Monday. Let's see. Monday, we do nothing. We just chill at home. We'll do errands, like a regular family. Tuesday, they do swim class. Wednesday, they do choir at their church, and they will do a Charlotte Mason Wednesday Riches type of thing. That's what they're calling it. And so they do like a composer study. We all meet at a really beautiful park near us. And like, we just had like a potluck the other day, and they'll play for like hours and hours and hours. The kids will just play by themselves. And there's probably like 30 kids, maybe like 35 kids. And like sometimes we'll bring our watercolors. I love it. It's like the best experience ever for kids. I wish I had that as a kid. They all play hide and seek, and it's kids. I wouldn't say of all ages. It's probably like babies, because they tag along all the way. And these families, like, they don't have a huge families. I think it's because we are in California. The max is like probably 5 kids or 6. So anyways, baby age all the way up to probably 10 or maybe like 12, just for this particular group that we're in, which is totally fine. So that's on Wednesdays. There's 2 things on Wednesdays. Thursdays is nothing so far. We're filling that in with, not that you have to fill it in every day. It's just we like to get out so that the other parent can work from home. But we want to do like tennis or something. And then Friday is the field trip day. So like Doug took them today on a hike. He took all 3 kids. And then Saturday, we usually try to entertain people, go out with our friends, whatever. And then Sunday, like church, like I said. So that's a lot of socializing. And also, I forgot to mention playing with the neighbors in between all the pockets of time that we can, because we're blessed with like a great neighborhood with younger kids, our kids' age. If we didn't have that, I think it'd still be totally enough socializing. Like, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it feels like a lot, because some of these groups are like 3 or 4 hours. It's like all day long. You can leave early and stuff, but yeah, the socialization, I think that we are very blessed because we live in such a populated area in that way. Not everybody wants to live here, obviously. But if you lived in a rural place, if I lived in a rural place, I'd still homeschool. I just create my own group. I would be in charge of something that I wanted to create, because what else are you going to do? I mean, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to, but if you did, I'd have to create it myself. So that's just the thing that you have to really understand. So the other question that I get is, how many hours does it take a day? So this is where we are very flexible. We lean more towards the unschooling for kindergarten age, just that whole philosophy that like, if once the kid wants to learn, they're going to learn it all really fast. And I was really nervous about this because, again, I was in school and I never wanted to learn a single thing that I wasn't being forced, because I had no free time. But I had to ask myself, like, if I had all the free time in the world, to an extent, obviously you got to do errands and help your family clean and like cook and stuff, and do these obligations as a kid, to just be a part of the family. But if I had like a lot more free time, I'd probably want to read eventually. I'd probably want to, like, a lot of people that don't homeschool, they think, well, the kid will never want to learn anything, but that's just not the case. Like, humans, and I won't go into the psychology of all this, but humans are made to want to learn information. And so I did test this on Annabelle. So when she was 5, I was like, let's learn to read. Okay. Like any other basic mom. I was like, we're going to learn how to read. Here's your list. She wanted nothing to do with it. And so I forced it. Like I did. Cause I was like, come on, like, you're just being stubborn. Like, let's do it. And so I forced it for like 30 days, and she didn't want to learn it. So she didn't learn it. It's just like when I was in school, if I didn't want to learn a subject, I retained no information. This is why I retain like hardly any information from any of my classes from grade school all the way to college, because I just don't care. Like the information that I tested for, I threw in the mental trash because I had no use for it. And so I only retained things that I had use for. So she didn't retain any of that. She didn't want to learn it. So I started over 6 months later, and she taught herself to read nearly in just like 2 to 3 months. We did the whole classic, I teach your child to read in 100 easy lessons. I'll link that down below. And then also we started on the good and the beautiful, because that one got kind of stale. We got like through halfway that big old like 1950s book. I think it's very old. And she can read level 1 and level 2. So that's pretty good. I don't think it matters though. I think if she learned to read at the end of age 6, 7, she'd be fine like I do. So as far as like how many hours does it take? Like today we didn't do anything because they were on a field trip. And so sometimes we're very flexible. I don't sit at the table like these YouTube homeschool moms. And I think it's like good because they have a lot of kids and usually they're by themselves without a spouse. And so that's why they have to do it like 9 to 12 every day. Let's get it done, or whatever. That's totally fine. But we don't do that because our schedule is so up and down. And sometimes I work and sometimes he works. We just make sure that we get in. Like I've averaged out the lessons in the Good and the Beautiful curriculum specifically for Annabelle for reading and math. Those are the two biggest subjects we work on. And she does 2 a day and then she's done by August. So that's what I do. And so sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 2. So it just depends. Okay. So how strict am I? I am not strict because she's only 6. I think the biggest, blessing I could give to her is letting her play because, kids learn through play. And so yeah, I just let her play a ton. Now sometimes I'm like, listen, this is the time that we have to homeschool and we didn't have time for the last 2 days or yesterday. So we got to get it in. Like I try to level with her, like, let's get this done that we can go do this. And she's usually very agreeable in that way because she does like to learn it and it's fun. And by the time she's getting restless because the reading gets a little difficult, we've done enough. And so yeah, I'm not that strict, but sometimes I'm like, listen, we have to do this. So I don't know, I would say I'm like average. I am reading a ton of books on unschooling and basically the idea that, like I said, once the kid wants to learn, that's when they actually learn. When you force information down the kid's throat, they just reject learning. And so this is why, at least for me, I didn't pick up a book on my own free will till I was 26 years old. I didn't want to learn a single thing because I didn't want to read Great Expectations, but I was forced. Like I didn't want to read Dante's Inferno. This is like high school, like English, AP English books, like, cause I was forced, I wanted to learn about social media. I want to learn about this. I want to learn about this, but I didn't have any time to learn anything I ever wanted. And so I'll end on this note, obviously, like most people, myself as well, you're like a dabbler. You're not that good at any one given thing because you're just sprinkled little bits of nonsense information. So I won't go down that rabbit hole, but I'm trying to give Annabelle the free will to learn however much she wants and however long it takes. And so my whole philosophy right now, and Doug's too, is we give her like a smorgasbord of learning. So a lot of people will hear this and they'll think, you only school your kids 10 minutes a day. And some days you don't even do it. It's like, I always am schooling Annabelle. We always are. We are learning through cooking and measurements with math, and she sees our business. We explain everything, nearly everything. I talk about ads. That's an ad. That's an ad. That's an ad. Marketing, camera equipment, like communication. We talk about history through songs. I mean, if I didn't teach her anything and we just lived life, like I wouldn't be teaching her all this other stuff, but we're constantly explaining, whenever she wants to know, or even when she doesn't, honestly. So we're like those annoying parents. And so because of that, I'm not concerned with like the little or lack thereof, like disciplined education at a 6-year-old grade level. So I could go a lot on this, but I really do lean towards the unschooling philosophy that they should learn whatever the heck they want when they want. And if you communicate effectively with your child, if you give them ample opportunities to learn, obviously they need the basics, reading, writing, math, communication skills. They're going to pick up on those because you are that way. I think a lot of parents will say, well, there are kids out there that they can't read or write. It's like, usually it's because their parents couldn't read or write, So I am just not concerned with that. The biggest thing I will say though, is we do very, very little screen time. It's only when I'm really sick with nausea. It's like lately it's been more because it's like, oh my gosh, so sick with nausea. But once that's over, like we really hardly have any screen time, and definitely no iPads. I probably let them play on the iPad like twice because I was like real sick. And it's like the Khan Academy. Like it's not watching Cocomelon, and we read a lot. So we get 50 library books every single week, and we just sit there and read to all 3 of them for like 40 minutes till I'm dying. And then we do read alouds, and we'll read the Great Illustrated Classics. So anyways, I'll link below like some resources and just lots of books, because the biggest thing for them is I really want them to love reading. And I wish I had the love of reading at a younger age. So that is everything I could stuff into one podcast that I could think of. If you guys have follow-up questions, I'll do a part 2. Leave them down below. DM me. Actually, don't DM me because I won't see it. It's like there's too many people DMing lately. So yeah, leave them down below this YouTube video or in a review or wherever you can get to me. And yeah, I hope you guys got value from my experience. Again, like this was very just me being me. So there's a lot of things you could criticize, a lot of things you could pick apart, because I'm not politically correct, or I didn't say things in the right way, or I don't know what a PSA stands for. But again, this podcast is just me sharing like my whatever, unedited truth with what I've experienced. And there's a lot more things, but in a nutshell, we're very, very happy that we're homeschooling. And I forgot to mention one more thing. There are homeschoolers. It's the last thing, I swear. There are homeschoolers that they do a hybrid. This is what I did not know. My sister didn't know. My mom doesn't know, like nobody. You can actually put your kid in school in a homeschool co-op 2 days a week, like Tuesday, Thursday, all day or half day. And then you homeschool your kids the other time. So we might consider that when they're getting older, like maybe middle school, high school, and they can effectively tell me what's going on. Okay, this is like the longest podcast of life. So that is really cool. And like, people don't know that. People just think homeschooling is sitting at your kitchen table, but it's such a mishmash. You can make it whatever you want. Okay, I digress. All right. So that is pretty much it for today's episode. Leave a review if you guys got value from this, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.